Good morning. Well, I'm at the Long Beach airport. My plan was to record quite a bit of like the summary at the airport. And this airport is so small and it's just not a lot of places. Plus, I'm very tired. Yesterday went great. Everything was smooth getting here. Took a lift. There's no traffic on Saturday morning, so been here for a long time. But getting set to fly to Phoenix. This episode is just going to be a summary of the trip. Yes, if I have time, I will talk some when I'm in Phoenix. I got to say, I feel for the Southwest people because of the decision to charge for checked bags. They were begging people for their Vegas trip. That's the people that were leaving earlier to check back, that no one was doing it because everybody does. And they said they wouldn't charge you, but people are just like, they've just had it. I don't know. I think when you set up a certain standard, it's tough to flip it around. But overall, I found the airline to be fine so far. This is a full flight, so this will be interesting. And my favorite thing about Long Beach, of course, is that you get to go out on the tarmac and walk onto the plane. So this is such a tiny airport with 11 gates, I think. Wow, I knew it was small, but it's even smaller than SNA. I forgot how it was when we went in 23. But so I have time in Phoenix. I'll do some summary. I might write down some notes when I'm on the plane. If not, I will do it when I'm back at home with better sound quality. But let's do it. Let's play the music one last time here on the Solo Trip Report. Here we go.
Hey there. Well, welcome to the final episode of this podcast miniseries here on the Tomorrow Society podcast. I am Dan Heaton, and this is just closing out my Disneyland solo trip report. If this is the first episode you've listened to in this series, I would recommend you start with day 1 and especially days 2 and 3, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this episode is summing up my thoughts on what happened on those days. Well, expecting you probably heard those, but maybe not. Regardless, there's plenty of info about Disneyland and my trip that you might enjoy either way. Much of this episode is going to be a conclusion recorded more recently here in the studio, where I give out awards, I rank all the roller coasters, I talk about what I loved and didn't like from the trip. And then I talk about kind of my feelings on Disney after this trip. I also talk about pricing, what I paid for things, whether I think the trip was a good value, and where I see Disney going in the future. Before I do all that, though, I'm going to play one more audio clip from my journey back. The intro of this was from that day, basically day 4 of the trip, which essentially was just me waking up, getting to Long Beach Airport, then traveling to Phoenix, and then back to St. Louis. But I did want to mostly focus on my thoughts kind of when I've had a little time for it to sink in and, get good sleep and everything else. But still, I feel like it's fun to hear what I was thinking at the time as I was journeying back after what was really an awesome trip at Disneyland. So many great memories, so many cool attractions, went better than I ever could have expected, and would love to get back there. Family, solo, whatever. I mean, I'd love to do both. That time and doing all those attractions has just made me want to spend more time at the parks, whether it's Disneyland, Disney World, Universal, Six Flags, Kings Island, Cedar Point, wherever. I want to spend a lot of time at parks this year. This episode includes a lot of concluding information and summary info and thoughts going back. So I want to take you right to it. First, before we do the main summary, let's go back to Dan on day 4, traveling back on his Disneyland solo trip. I say it like it's not me. It's me. I was doing it. Let's go back to me in the past, now about a month ago, as I'm journeying back. I hope you enjoy it and you stick around and listen to the rest. This is going to be super fun. Let's do it.
Well, I can tell that I am worn out because I keep thinking I should record something and then just don't remember. This is what happens when you do like 28,000, 27,000 steps in combined days. And I think there was like 16,000 on that first day where I went to downtown Disney. But always in hindsight, that first night, you're so just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then after doing the park days, you're like, why didn't I rest the first night? But that's just not the way it goes. But doing okay here. I'm in the Phoenix airport right now, getting set to fly to St. Louis. If I'm going to give my quick off-the-top airport rankings, mostly in terms of cleanliness, but also just places to sit and comfort. It's interesting. I always think of St. Louis as being the worst. Not the worst here. The worst was Long Beach. There's just very, very few. I mean, I love how small it is. I love that the security. I was the only person in line at the time. Granted, I got there a little early. I was, my flight was at 9:40, and I set up the lift for 7:15, and I was at the airport at 7:35 because the guy got a little early. And I always thought it was further away, but no, it was very convenient. Yeah, so it's a little hard. I would say, just really based on cleanliness and on limited food options when I went in there hungry and had kind of a bad sandwich. Don't love this Phoenix airport. The bathrooms are kind of grimy. There's not a lot of seating. You're kind of squished in the corner. It could just be this Terminal D that we're in with the very end. But so I put that next. Then I would go Lambert because the area that I was able to kind of scope out in the corner, I don't know, everything just felt pretty pleasant. It was newer. Sometimes I've been in the older area, and that's not great at all. And then I think the winner is John Wayne because it's small and really well kept and easy and close to Disneyland, of course. And second would be Denver, which was really nice and pleasant too. But I haven't done much exploring here. This one's fine. Everybody's lined up, another full flight. So it's interesting how my first flight of this trip was only about half full. And I was like, wow, I wonder if people aren't flying as much or if this has something to do with Southwest or the prices or anything. All the other flights have been completely full. So it's and then they're having to beg people to check their bags. Even if they don't charge them, people just don't want to do it. People have no nonsense. I just do not get the impression that anyone is super happy on this. The only benefit to me, though, is because I took the normal fare, but not the basic fare. So I had my seat, but I basically, always end up in group 7 or 8 because I'm not paying extra because they want you to pay extra and everything. So I always did that. And so I'm the last person almost to board the plane, which, especially with an aisle seat, it's who cares? Sure, I'll be the last person. I don't need to light up. And I know the main reason this is not an issue is because I don't have any bags for the overhead bin. If I did, it would be a different story. I'd want to be in the front of my group, and I'd probably be like, oh man, I wish I had a better group. But in that case, I would almost rather just pay for the bags. I just do not want to be fighting for anything like this. So we're just kind of plugging away, getting set to board here. It's actually about boarding time, but they haven't even started the pre-boarding yet, so it's still early on. But I didn't really get to sum up my trip very well here, since we are going to be boarding soon, and still trying to kind of get all my thoughts together. So that's probably going to happen more when I get home with a very nice microphone and everything. I've barely used that microphone. I got it mostly for the Amazing Race Canada stuff over the summer. So I'm just kind of hanging out at the non-used gate over here. I need to set down this iced coffee, which is freezing my hand. But basically, everything went great. I mean, there's no major complaints. A lot of it just has to do with wearing myself out. Oh, maybe I should have this or this or this. But that happens with everyone. But I can't really think of any trip, family trip or solo, just with Aaron, with anyone, where I've been able to do so much and have it be just so easy. And really, I mean, to do 36 attractions the first day, 31, I think, the second day. And I did sit down and take breaks. It wasn't constant. I mean, there were times where I was felt like I was moving too quickly the first day. And then, you have your usual kind of issues with maintenance or things going down and everything. But really, I mean, even stuff came back that wasn't supposed to, that I thought Small World. I mean, the main attraction that was out was Rise of the Resistance. But I've done that quite a few times in the recent years. And it actually simplified the touring a lot, not having to think about trying to do that, because the one downside is I barely spent any time at Galaxy's Edge. I didn't end up even seeing the nighttime show, the production, which I've heard is really cool, but it's not that convenient to get back over there just with the setup of Disneyland. So basically, I just went to Smuggler's Run one night, spent a little time back there, and that was it. I didn't even get back there, which is fine, though, because I have spent a lot of time there. Now, I don't know if that's not a great sign for Disney, that I just didn't feel like I really missed out. But there are just so many things to do at Disneyland. Hollywood Studios is a bit different, where it's like the focal point. At Disneyland, to me, the focal points are other things. Whether it's, your Pirates Haunted Mansion, Tiana's over there, or it's the Space Mountain, Big Thunder, Matterhorn, or Fantasyland Dark Rides, whatever. There's just a lot of different ways to look at it. Would have been nice to see the Walt animatronic more just to see if it looked as bad as it does on TV when I see it on YouTube. I'm guessing it would be better in person. Yeah, I think we're going to board in a few minutes here, so I think that I'm going to sign off for this. I know you really didn't get to travel much with me or hear much on the fly, but this is what happens when you only have a little over an hour layover, and things are starting to heat up over here with Southwest. But just overall, I think it went really well. I obviously will sum it up. I'm going to look at here comes the announcement. Just in case you were wondering, don't leave luggage unattended if you're hearing this. But use the app Log Ride, where I kept track of it, and you can go back and look. So it's easy for me to remember what I did with their trip reports. So that's fun. Never really used that much, but I will use it here with so many attractions across the two parks. And then I didn't even know until the week before that I had a shot at Soarin' over California, and that was awesome to be able to do that. So a lot of little things like that. Credit Coaster coming back, day of, which led to some chaos, but worked out well. It's pretty great. Well, now I'm going to focus in on getting on this plane, and then I will check in with, I promise it won't be too crazy of a conclusion, but just kind of summing up the trip at the end. Hope you've enjoyed this kind of different approach. I don't know. There's a small part of me that just wants to toss all this and not even release it, so which still may happen, just because it's like, it was good for me to kind of sum up my thoughts, but is this good for me or actually good as a podcast? That's still up in the air. So if you hear this, I guess I decided to release it when I'm on better sleep and not 3 straight days, less than 6 hours of sleep, and plus a couple days even before where I wasn't sleeping great. The last time I had a good night's sleep was probably like 6 days ago because I was nervous and then on it. But last night was getting better. I think when you walk that much, it gets a little better. And overall, things couldn't have worked out better. Great way to celebrate a birthday. And now I get to go home, hang with the family, watch the Super Bowl. I'll put this in. Hopefully the Seahawks win. I mean, I'm not going to be really, really mad. I like Drake May. I like Mike Vrabel. I really think it'd be cool for Sam Darnold and JSN and that whole group over in Seattle to get a win. They're fun vibes. I like vibes. Like I was saying with Disneyland, there's something I really connect. Like, it's one of the reasons why I think Big Thunder is so fun the other night is because people are just so pumped. And I'm a vibes person, and I love the vibes. The vibes are great at Walt Disney World, too. So it's nothing about that. It's just one of the reasons I love going to theme parks. Just happy vibes. It's good. And even just the whole silliness of, like, trying to do a strategy. And all you're really worried about is, what am I going to ride? What am I going to do? What am I going to eat? It's kind of a good way to have a break from daily cares, like work and everything else, but especially the cares of the world. It's very easy to get pulled right back into it when you look on news, Blue Sky, whatever. And I try not to do too much of that. I don't put my head in the sand, but like I said at the beginning, if you are having any issues or struggling or anything, hopefully this adds a little bit of levity for you. And we're thinking of you. Going to a place like Disneyland, seeing everybody get along, and 98% of the people be super happy is cool to see. And we need more of that in our lives, especially from all ages, cultures, races, everything. So take care, and I'll check in a bit.
Welcome back to the studio after that brief foray into day 4. As you can tell, I had plans to record more, but when you're in transit, it's sometimes not always that easy to remember, oh yeah, I'm going to stop and try to summarize my trip. But I am here in the studio to talk more. I've put together a bunch of categories: biggest surprise, biggest disappointment, all about the food, worst painful ride for an old man, best nighttime spectacular. I'm just going to have fun with this. But before I get to those awards, I want to talk about a few overall things. Near the end, I might talk a little bit about kind of what I learned on my trip and how I'm looking at Disney, just given even some recent news that happened after I got back. I want to talk first about the price, because obviously a big part right now, whenever you hear people talk about Walt Disney World, Disneyland, going on trips, a lot with Disney World, because that has so much prominence for like this rite of passage trip, is how much it costs and how much it's gone up, especially just given the nature of the economy right now with groceries, everything else. Now gas prices all seeming to be getting higher. So for my trip itself, I'm going to quickly summarize again. I mentioned this to very early on, maybe in day one. Again, what inspired me to do this trip was a deal from Costco, a 2-day park hopper at Disneyland. The list price, no tax included, because we ordered it online, was, I believe, $389, which Disney for a 2-day park hopper with Lightning Lane was over $500. I think Undercover Tourist was like $488 with all in for that too. So right there, we're going to get about $100 savings. And then because we ordered online, we had some deals to Costco, everything else, credit card, there's a bunch of things. We worked out that the price of it for me was really about $334, which if you think about it, that's about, $167 a day. Lightning Lane multi-pass for that day was, I think, like $35, maybe $37 for it. So if you think about it right there off the top, you kind of start to subtract the way that things go. Like let's just say you take Lightning Lane out of the picture. So you're looking at like about, let's say 74. Let's do the 37 each day. And so now you're looking at 260. That's an easy round number. And so you're looking at $130 a day. And this includes park hopping. So, you drop down. Park hopping is quite expensive. So you're looking at, a pretty good deal in terms of the ticket. And then airfare, one way I used points, 12,500 points from Southwest, but it was probably would have been about $200 for one way. The other way would have been about $200, but then I had $35 in credit. So it was like $170 basically for my flight. Now, granted, that included points and everything else. So that's not what you would pay just if you were doing the exact same trip, unless you had points or credits or whatever. And then the hotel, again, it's interesting because, you see all these things about like $100 a night. And there were a few, but they were a little shaky looking. But a lot of the places that people talk about as being good deals, your Parkview, your Tropicana, your Best Western, Candy Cane Inn, whatever, a lot of those that are often considered like the budget way to go, Fairfield Inn, everything else, were all over $300 a night. So ultimately I ended up doing Howard Johnson, which I think was like $210. It was right through Wyndham. I joined, of course, you can just join all these rewards programs for free. So, that was like $210 a night or so, but then after fees and everything else, all in, it was $760, which is a little more than I expected to spend. But I mean, if you think about it, Disney, like Disneyland Resort, you're talking $600-700 a night. Even the Pixar place, I think, was like $500. Grand California is like $700 or $800. So you're really, best case, you're looking at probably more than double even for the cheapest Disney resort, and probably triple for Grand California. And I didn't even work it all out with fees and everything else. So it wasn't the best deal, but you're paying for the location. I could have gotten something a bit less if I didn't mind being further away. But even some of the places that I think of, like your Hyatt House or whatever, are some of those types of ones that are further away, but are still maybe like a 15-minute or so walk, were still similar price or more. So I think I made the right choice. Like I said, I don't think the Howard Johnson was the super most comfortable hotel I've ever been in. It seemed very kind of dated. They really need to work on, they didn't really have a lot of the typical kind of connectors and everything else. It was like old plugs and everything, not near the bed. So some things you had to do there, like, to make it all work. They also had a weird thing where they had a balcony, but to get to the balcony, you had to go through the closet and then turn and then go out this tiny door inside the closet to a very small balcony which faced the highway. So it took me a little bit. I was like, okay, I have a balcony. How do I get there? And like, oh, I have to go through this closet and everything else. So I went out there for a moment just to see it and then was like, okay, that's it. But I'd say overall, if you think about it, and then also food, where I came in with a bunch of Disney gift cards. I think I had the equivalent of like $180 in gift cards. And I did pay out of pocket for Earl of Sandwich, but I also used this for the single pass Lightning Lane for Radiator Springs Racers. And I think I ended up paying for the churro at the very end. But the rest of it, I just used. And granted, because I had that and everything else, maybe, things like, did I really need to buy a beer for $15? Probably not. But overall, I felt like I didn't go break the bank. If you think about it, if you take out the $18, you're looking at like about $80 a day for the 2 park days, essentially, for eating, and that includes those drinks. So, I was pretty frugal. Of course, I should also mention I ate breakfast at Panera, so I bought a breakfast sandwich, and we have their sip club, so I think that was like $6 or $7 each time. It was not a cheap trip, but I felt like, given the value instead of this being a unique thing and everything else, the all-in total was not that bad, So, how do you quantify things like the gift cards and the points and all of that? But if I think about like the 3 big expenses, tickets, hotel, and then the part I did pay for airfare, you're looking at maybe like $1,300. But again, it was only for a span of, 3 nights, 2 park days. If you really wanted to scrimp, you could have done like a really early morning flight, and then I benefit from the 2-hour time zone difference. And, you get there pretty early, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be there the night before. I didn't want to worry about what happens if my flight gets delayed, whatever else. Spend the time in the parks. It's so hard to quantify value because everyone's value of what they're willing to pay for something like Disney trips and tickets and everything else is different. But I'm going to focus more in on the park ticket part of it. I think it was a really good value. If you think about how much time that I really spent in the parks. So, first day open from 8 to 9, I was there earlier or whatever else, but let's just say park hours, 8 to 9, 13 hours. Second day, 8 to 12, which is 16 hours. 29 hours worth of official park time, and that doesn't include things like the fact that World of Color went past 9 o'clock and everything else. So let's estimate 30 hours. Let's say 30 hours. And I don't like doing this per hour thing, but if you say, okay, Dan, if you could pay about $10 an hour to be in Disney parks for several days. But yeah, yes, I would do that, including getting to skip the line because I'm also including Lightning Lane. I want to call it GD Plus, but I would think about it. Yeah, that's a good deal. Now, granted, this came with a special Costco ticket, and it's Disneyland, and it's 2 days, and everything else. And these days had really good hours, which is common at Disneyland. But you get to Disney World, it's a different story. And then you take into all the count, it could really add up fast in terms of what you're paying. So Disney prices have gone up a lot. However, in this particular case, given the volume of attractions at especially Disneyland Park, but both parks, I think to me this was a good value for the tickets. And yes, I could have gone cheaper on the hotel. Couldn't have really done any better with airfare, honestly, but could have done a little cheaper on the hotel. But again, I wanted to have something that had a good location and was not super low end. I thought, okay, this seems to be, people stay here a lot. This is pretty reputable. So I think, in one sense, I do feel like Disney continues to get more expensive. And I think the tickets are really the killer. That's where this benefited, where at least, sure, I would have still had a blast if I paid $500 for 2 days, but getting the chance to cut that down significantly, it's a different story. Now, I have found, especially with Orlando, the Southwest flights have gone way up, and coming from St. Louis, that's a challenge like I talked about during those clips. So I think, in a sense, it's a combination of Disney raising prices on their tickets, food a little bit higher, and then hotels a little bit higher, but they are offering a lot of discounts at Disney proper, especially Disney World, I would say. But I think a big part of it is also the things you're doing along with your trip, whether it's renting a car or in Florida, or not having Magical Express, and airfare continuing to go up, and Southwest no longer giving you free bags. All these things, I think they all add up to the perception. Some of them are directly connected to Disney, like the Disney World tickets just seem so high right now and continue to go up. And even when they offer deals, it's usually like, oh, kids get free tickets, or, oh, it's for Florida residents. That's really hard to get around, especially when you're talking about 4 parks where you're likely going to be spending more than a couple days. Where in Disneyland, 2-3 days, you can have a great experience. In Florida, if you want to hit all 4 parks, you're talking at least 3 days, 4, 5, maybe a whole week. And that's where it really gets up there. And then the longer you stay, the more hotels are. But I think, again, connecting it to some of the other increases in costs, even if you decide, okay, we're going to just get groceries, those have gone up, fast food, whatever, it all adds up, including just the daily prices. So this does not let Disney off the hook, though. I feel like they have offered some discount. They just, as I'm recording this, came out with free dining and everything else. But I think there are other things they could do, especially in Florida, with offers that are not like even the free dining. It's like you're staying at, for the full dining plan, you have to stay at a deluxe or deluxe villa and then also buy a certain pass with Park Hopper certain days. So, and you don't get any discounts on hotels. There are other levers they could pull that I think in the future they are going to have to pull in order to keep people coming, because as we're seeing the economy a little shaky right now, that's what I'll say. Even different than when I recorded this, where the big news had to do with something entirely different crisis. Domestically, now there's something in the world that could also be hurting the economy. And, again, the economy maybe not the number one issue there, but is part of it and could be a big issue in the future. I'm saying this not to veer off into anything political, but just to say that all of these factors, whether gas prices going up if people are driving to these locations or whatnot, are going to play a role in, shrinking attendance or just having to make better offers. Also, Disney, like even at Disneyland right now, they don't have a lot of new things to offer to entice people. Now you have all the locals and everything else. It's an interesting year. It's going to get better, but I saw something in Florida that said Disney plans to have the installation portion, like the groundwork and foundations for Cars Land or the new Cars area and Villains Land in place by 2028. And I'm like, okay, well, when are they going to open, especially with the Cars area? So you're just going to have like the groundwork and the foundation and the infrastructure. So you had 2 more years for that. I would have assumed that the Piston Peak area would be open sooner. And we also just heard, I mentioned that I was probably going to ride my last time on the Monsters, Inc. Dark Ride because that was going to close soon. Now that's going to be open another year. And Disney hasn't really said anything else about Pandora in California. And it's making me wonder, okay, did that get delayed? Did they figure out a way to work around having that other ride open because they need it for capacity because DCA on busy days still isn't that way? Or is there something else they're doing? It's interesting to note that this is very common for a lot of different, theme park operators, entertainment operators, everything else. You can promise a certain time frame and then you make changes and then you have to deal with, okay, how are we going to put this infrastructure in place? It makes me pause when I think, because I was at DCA and I was thinking, okay, the next time I'm here, who knows? Maybe something will be open on Avengers Campus. Maybe we're going to see construction on Pandora. Maybe the Coco ride will be open. Now I'm starting to go like, the Avengers Campus stuff will get there, but I don't know. Is that going to be, are we going to have anything in 27? Or is that going to be in 28? Because you could see a lot of construction. So that's a good sign there. But how long is that going to be? And then if they haven't even really broken ground on the Pandora or Coco updates, they seem to really be slow rolling it. So I don't know. I mean, they get a lot of mileage out of anniversary celebrations and about locals loving that park, and I totally get it. And they also don't have competition on level. I mean, yes, we have the new Fast and Furious coaster opening this year in Hollywood, but they don't have the same competition that you see with Epic Universe and everything else going, in that area. It's a bit different. Yes, you have Knott's and Magic Mountain, and you do have Universal Hollywood, but it's not exactly the same setup. Well, I'm going to veer back towards my trip now that I talked about that, because I feel like in one sense it's difficult for them because I'm kind of saying, okay, we need to really speed up the investment. However, you're also charging a lot. And again, I feel like when people approach the costs, they come in with such an agenda. It's either A, I think it's too expensive and I'm going to find all the evidence to support that, or B, well, Broadway costs this, or an NBA game costs this, and Disney's fine, and then you push on that end. I'm kind of in the middle in a way where I recognize the cost and I recognize the expense, and me being fortunate enough to be able to do the trip I just did and be doing fine and not have it be a big expense. But obviously the solo trip for me and just me 2 days is different than a family of four of us doing a big week-long trip to Disney World, which it's really hard to get around, even if you stay moderate or even, low-end deluxe or offsite or whatever, it's really hard to not get into a very high number when you do something like that. So it's tricky for Disney, but I think continually we're seeing it here in St. Louis with the Cardinals. I know the team has been bad, but also they're really struggling to get people to buy tickets. And I think even if the team was good, it might not be as easy. The entertainment dollars, people are spending a lot of money, whether it's streaming at home continuing to go up, or movies cost more, or whatever, your concerts, everything else. And it's not that we have so much more money to spend. And who knows, companies laying off people, whatever else. It's not just that Disney has gotten more expensive, which it has. It's that this is also kind of symptomatic of what entertainment is facing overall, where they keep raising prices partially to offset costs because supply costs and cost of employees and everything has gone up. Only so many people can afford this or willing to afford this or are crazy like me. Not everybody is. So it's something there. But let's circle back to Disneyland and talk a little bit more about the trip before I get into my awards. In a way, I feel like I've turned this into like an old school Tomorrow Society Bulletin episode. If you were a patron to the Tomorrow Society podcast, where I'm not talking off the cuff. I mean, obviously I've thought about the topics I want to discuss, but I'm not like hitting all these points I've written down. It gets a little more freewheeling. But I love doing this, and I don't get to do this as often. And even when I did the interviews, I didn't do this as much. This was more when I talk to other podcasters or when I appear on other shows or when I'm just, driving my family crazy, going on and on about Disney and everything else and theme parks and what's happening. I mean, heck, today we just heard the announcement here in St. Louis of Six Flags St. Louis being spun away or divested, sold, they use a lot of different words here, to another entity along with a bunch of other parks. And part of that is the fact that, again, it's the same sort of issue. People, they have this massive chain and people just aren't spending money everywhere. And so they're going to focus. They need to be able to really invest in those other parks. I'm not defending Six Flags. I feel like that organization has kind of been poorly run. And since the merger has really been kind of a mess based on my experience. But I will say that is another example of you can't just have all these parks and expect them all to be profitable. And I think they may see more changes in the future as we veer along. But circling back to my Disneyland trip, I just have to say that there's so many good things about that resort. The way it's set up, how compact it is, the way that there are so many hotels. Yes, you can say, well, it's kind of, not as super pleasant when you're just walking down the middle of this, or not the middle, walk down the middle of the street, walking down the street and there's, people honking horns and stoplights and everything else. It might not be as nice as, I'm going to hop on the monorail or everything else or whatever, but it's so easy. Everything about this trip, I would say I push. But the reason I was able to do so many attractions and wipe myself out and everything else is because it's so easy to visit these parks. So again, if you're going to spend all that money, the ease of use. And there's so much to offer. The Disneyland park is put together in a way where they pack so much into a fairly small space, where honestly, if you add that with DCA, it's pretty comparable to the 4 parks in terms of number of attractions. Now, granted, there's other aspects that are not just attractions, whether it's restaurants, whether it's atmosphere, entertainment, everything else, that obviously you benefit from having those 4 parks. Also just spreading out people. But you get so much. Think about Fantasyland at the Disneyland park with how much it has and how in a small space you just have all these dark rides and other rides and everything put together versus the similar setup in Florida where it's like there aren't as many. And yes, you have something like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train that is not at Disneyland, or, Little Mermaid is at DCA, but some of those types of attractions. But here you have all the dark rides, then in the back you have Small World and Casey Jr. and Storybook Land, and so much. And that's just one aspect of it. You also have the Rivers of America, which felt even more important to me than it would have before, or Indiana Jones, which you will eventually have a version of in Florida, but don't currently have now. And then Galaxy's Edge. It's almost like it's to the point where Disneyland Park offers so much that you look at Galaxy's Edge and you're like, oh yeah, that's there too. Where Galaxy's Edge is this cornerstone of Disney's Hollywood Studios. And you look at Disneyland, you're like, I like Galaxy's Edge. I think it's going to be interesting to see this new version of Smuggler's Run. And Rise of Resistance, of course, is great, but that wasn't open when I was there. But they have that area, and you think, I could go to Disneyland and never hit Galaxy's Edge and still just not feel like I missed much of anything. And that's a weird thing to say with Rise of the Resistance there, and it's partially because I've done it in Florida multiple times and in Disneyland. But that tells you something. Now, the one exception is still Tomorrowland. I don't know what they can do there. I know what they should do. They should find a new way to have a people mover system, whether it's with those tracks or building new supports. They should do something with the launch bay, whether I know they have the DVC lounge, but use that space and use Autopia and put in something big in that area. So then you have, I'm not saying Tron, I think something new. You have a second huge draw in probably more in the Autopia section, but maybe you're also using the launch bay area for queue, whatever. So you have two big draws in that area plus the people mover. That's what you need to do there. Right now, you have technically the Matterhorn, but I still feel like that feels more like Fantasyland. You have the Nemo subs, which I love the history of the subs and don't want to lose. You have the monorail over there. But really, you have a lot of space that is not well used. You have a good Space Mountain, a very good Space Mountain, and you have Buzz and Star Tours. But there just seems to be not as much there as you think there would be, especially compared to when you look at these other areas, especially Fantasyland, but even Adventureland, where you have Tiki Room, Jungle Cruise, Indiana Jones, and the Treehouse, all in that small area there. And then you have New Orleans Square with the two big attractions, Frontierland with Big Thunder and the rivers and everything else. The other lands are just really well done. And I look at these lands, yes, I'd love to see Galaxy's Edge get a third attraction. Nothing could be completely finished. I feel like you're really close to having just, maybe you could do something with the Bayou Country. But overall, the main thing you need to do is work on Tomorrowland. And I know they're making updates to DCA, but I implore you, Disney, D23 Expo this year, announce some type of update for Tomorrowland. Please. I thought you were going to do it 2 years ago. Do it. Do it. But my experience, I still enjoyed Tomorrowland because I still like that vibe. But I found myself, I did Buzz a bunch of times. I did Star Tours. I did Space Mountain. Beyond that, I spent time there. Partially, I spent time there recording because it was not that crowded and easy to do. Where if you try and record in the middle of New Orleans Square, good luck. But in that area, it was pretty easy to record some clips because there's not a lot of people in there. It's pretty easy, So that's not really a resounding endorsement of that area. And I will say DCA has some really good spots and attractions. I like the area by Soarin' and Grizzly Peak and all of that. I think it's really nicely done. Cars Land is well done, but I find to be just a little bit much. Maybe it's not my vibe. It's just blacktop, loudness, a lot of people there. It's just a bit much. But Radio Strings Racers is great and has an awesome atmosphere. Love the San Francisco Square area. I don't know if it was really needed to do this update, but I think what they did is well done. I think that Avengers Campus, I find myself enjoying more each time. And I think when the two new attractions open, assuming that they're okay, especially the big one, I think that's going to be a home run. Right now, I think it's okay. I think what they do with characters is great. Web Slinger is great. Guardians is awesome. It's going to be something really special when everything is there the way it needs to be. But the rest of the park I don't really enjoy. I mean, yes, I like Toy Story Mania. I like the Incredicoaster, but I really don't love the rest of the park. Now, so I feel like I'm not saying they need to do another big DCA 2.0. So let's say they add Coco and Pandora. That's great. And the Pandora might get some of the Hollywoodland part out, but it's still, we're going to have that massive Pixar Pier area and Goofy Sky School and everything else. So I know what people say. I've heard descriptions like, oh, Epcot's the worst domestic park. I totally disagree. I'd argue that if you're going for vibes, I'm not just doing an attraction lineup, because the top attractions at DCA can stand up with almost any park. It's just when you get beyond that top group of Radiator Springs Racers, Guardians, Soarin', especially over California, Toy Story, Grizzly River, you get past that kind of top group, Web Slingers, it drops off precipitously. That is different than, I feel like Epcot might not have, as Guardians, but may not have all the peaks, but is consistent across the board. Animal Kingdom has the vibes. I feel like actually DCA's big companion is, of course, Disney's Hollywood Studios, which again, top of the attractions. You've got Rise of the Resistance, Tower of Terror, whatever Rock and Roller Coaster becomes, Slinky Dog, Toy Story Mania. You've got this great top group. Vibes aren't good. It's kind of chaotic. You don't have, and Runaway Railway, of course, is great, but you don't have that secondary part. And that's how I feel about DCA, in that I enjoy it. I enjoy the attractions, but the vibes I feel are a lot closer to being at a good Kings Island. I would have said Great America, but that was kind of a mess last year. But a good amusement park, yes, the attractions are better than Kings Island. Not coasters, but overall attractions. But the vibes don't feel the same way as, especially with Disneyland right there. They've done a lot of things to try and improve them. But for me personally, I go into DCA, I start to get a little stressed. Just because I feel like there's people everywhere. And this was not a busy day, but I get a little stressed. I want to go back to my little comfortable place of Disneyland. Like Rolly Crump said, Disneyland hugs you. It's a good salad. He's used a lot of description, but the Disneyland hugs you thing, it's so comforting. Even when it's packed, I just find it to be just such a cool place. Both have great vibes, but the vibes at Disneyland just connect with me, and not just because of nostalgia. I like a lot of the new things. I thought Tiana's was great. Galaxy's Edge, I might have just complained about it, but it's great. There's a lot of cool stuff. It's just the vibes really connect with me. So let's get into the awards and superlatives and rankings. Let's do all this fun stuff before we start to wind down this summary episode. Well, now we're going to talk about roller coasters. We're going to start there with my roller coaster rankings. This will be a spoiler for ultimately a blog post I put together where I list my rankings of the roller coasters at the Disneyland Resort. And it's interesting, too, that Disneyland, despite having all different types of rides, has a fairly limited collection of roller coasters. And it's also interesting, too, with all the different expansions we've heard about, I haven't heard anything about more roller coasters being added, and I think it's just about space. They just don't really have a ton of space, well, especially not at Disneyland Park, but also even at DCA, with some of the expansions, they're instead kind of choosing more of these like the big Avengers Campus ride or whatever they're going to do with Pandora. They're not really leaning into the roller coaster side of it, which I get. I think that you've got Magic Mountain nearby in Knott's Berry Farm, and Disneyland does not feel the need to compete in the same way. It doesn't have the space that Florida does where they can do kind of these bigger scale coasters, which, as we know, for Disney quality cost a lot of money. Let's quickly do number 7, which is Chip 'n Dale's Gadget Coaster, formerly known as the Gadget Go Coaster. Typical kind of family coaster, nearly exceeded the one above it, but I am going to put that at number 7. Great starter coaster for kids in a cute Toontown area, all revamped. Number 6, Goofy Sky School. We're going to hear more about that later. I will just say this is a big step below the top 5. Kind of in its own island here, but much more for me. It has more thrills. It's going to be more exciting than the Chip 'n Dale's coaster, but also has a lot of downsides, and we will get into those shortly. So let's get into the top 5, which is really where the coasters you want to ride at these two parks start with number 5. Number 5 is the Incredicoaster. Originally started as California Screamin', and like I said, this one is far above Goofy Sky School. You could easily make the argument for it to be higher. For me, I think it's arguably the most thrilling coaster pretty easily at the entire Disneyland Resort, the only one with an inversion. It has a pretty cool launch. There's a lot to like about it. It also gives a lot of great views of the, Pixar Pier area and traverses basically the entire backside of the park over there almost in one way. And it looks great. It looks like kind of your typical kind of boardwalk coaster. That's the idea that it's put together. And of course is done with more modern technology, including just a smoother ride. It's not super smooth, but smooth enough. Also has a variety of elements, a lot of straight track, but hills, turns, a loop, a launch, a lot of different ones. It's one of the longer coasters you're going to experience. I will say I think the Incredicoaster upgrade was lame. Yes, you've got the voices of some of the characters in the loading area, which that's pretty well done. But also, I didn't have really there was no audio for me, like during the ride, which I thought there'd be music and everything else. I wonder if that was a glitch first day back. But even so, the characters just kind of, I don't know. I think, hey, I don't feel like there's really anything that's like a downgrade from the previous version. Adding the characters and everything else isn't really negative. It's just not really positive either. It's like a 2% upgrade for me. And I know it does fit better in kind of the Pixar Pier area. I also just think that whole area, the loading area, everything is just not a super pleasant area. I sound such like an old man where I'm like, it's not pleasant and it's loud and it all reminds me of like a big coaster at an amusement park like Six Flags or something. Not the entire experience, but the loading area and everything else. But no big negatives here with the Incredicoaster. I think if you go to DCA and you haven't ridden it, you should definitely do so if you're a fan of coasters or even somebody who's just okay on things like your Rock and Roller Coaster or your Everest. I think Rock and Roller Coaster is a little more intense just because the launch is stronger. But I'd put it on par with that and Everest maybe. And, it's hard to say because it's not really similar to something like Tron, which is very short but has a cool launch, or Guardians, which can kind of make you feel a little queasy but doesn't really have any super big hills or anything else. But it's kind of in that zone more than the zone of the coasters that are coming up. Number 4, I had the Matterhorn Fantasyland side. Yes, I'm listing them separately, which is still great. I just feel like it's a little less unhinged than the Tomorrowland side. Seems to have more turns than drops, but I haven't done this scientifically. That's just what I've seen. Just the Matterhorn overall. I love the history. I think it's cool how they've upgraded the, Herald or Snowman. Animatronics look good. Some of the other changes are nice. And yes, it could hurt. But I feel like for me, like I mentioned in the clips, it didn't bother me too much. You feel it. That's the thing, is you feel it because you are just the way the ride vehicles are and the way you kind of hug the track and everything. And having that history, it definitely, you feel it. But to me, it was more in a fun way, like to add to the energy of it, not in a painful way. Also, the outside of the Matterhorn just looks awesome. Still looks so good. And when you're riding through it, you only get a small aspect of the experience, but the fact that they put a coaster inside the Matterhorn, still really cool to me, which leads me to number 3, which is the Tomorrowland side of the Matterhorn, which is crazy. And granted, it's not that different from Fantasyland. I don't want you to go in thinking that it's somehow a really big difference, but like most people have a preference of Alpha and Omega on Space Mountain at Disney World. I don't even know if I could say, because I feel like I always end up doing Lightning Lane. So I always ride the same one every time. I need to go some point and like rope drop it just to do the other side, because I always forget. I always end up going on the right side, which is the Lightning Lane side. So I haven't ridden the left one for a long time. But Tomorrowland one, I would say, is better because it's crazier if you're into that. And just, a little rough, but in a fun way. Small upgrade. You aren't getting a dramatically different experience, but I think it is enough where they would not be 3A and B, they'd be 3 and 4. Now we go to the big decision. Do we go with Space Mountain for number 1 or Big Thunder for number 1? They both have their own most exciting elements. But for number 2, I'm going to pick Space Mountain. Space Mountain, was basically in Disney World was the first big kid coaster I ever rode, though it was a long time before I kind of went much above that and did coasters with loops and everything else. I was basically into college by that point, end of high school or early college before I started doing that. So hence the low coaster count also, because I still mostly went to like Disney parks and other local and other places. So it was a long time before I've done more, as I'm still trying to get to 100 coasters as we speak. I have a really soft spot in my heart for Space Mountain Disney World. The Disneyland one also really good. It has some areas where it is better than Florida, especially with the kind of beginning of it, with the onboard audio and the hills and the way it kind of sets the stage super well with the multiple kind of lift hills upward before you ultimately take off. I think the onboard audio is cool. You really notice it during Hyperspace Mountain, which we did do in 2023 because that was in May. But I will say, I think the things that are not exciting is it is mostly all turns. You really sense that the building's not as big as the one in Florida. It also really has one slight dip that I'm aware of, but no big drops. And so whereas I think it's awesome, it's so much fun, it's not to me, I know people tend to rate this higher than Florida because it's not as rough. I think Florida has a better layout, and I also like the single file that has, where this is the 2 on the side. It's a little tight, including one of the times I rode with somebody who was, a larger person who seemed to be he was kind of throwing his arms around, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a picture of me, and I'm like, he was a very nice guy. I'm just trying to kind of move to the side a little bit. He was having a blast, so what can I say? But I also looked at the pictures, and there was a bunch of high schoolers on one of my rides, and the guy in the front brought along a banana and did like he was on a banana phone during the picture. You see this in parks with a lot of locals like this, like, oh my gosh, the Guardians Mission Breakout picture, just like Tower of Terror, so funny. There are so many different people doing ridiculous stuff. I just have my arm up like a dork, but there are people just like doing all kinds of, they're also dorky, but in a different way stuff. And so I enjoy that quite a bit. I never remember to do something ridiculous in the picture. I'm always just kind of like smiling like, but still enjoy Space Mountain a lot. I just think that it's smoother. I think has a lot going for it. I love the whole vibes of everything else. But I think my heart's a little bit more with Florida, even though that does not have the full onboard audio. There's a little more to it. The scale's a little bigger. Disneyland feels a little smaller, but is still an awesome attraction. This leads me to number 1, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which not only with its night ride, but just the definition of a fun Disney coaster. You have a little bit of thrills, but not too much. They have the lift hills split off where every time, even when you experience the thrills, you get a little break. People are just having a blast. Nobody's getting sick. Nobody's like super scared. It's all fun. And some of that carries over into others at World and Land, particularly Space Mountain, but also like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Slinky Dog, everything else has that kind of similar vibe. But even so, I can't think of a better example, also because I love the whole mountain layout. Disneyland also has the extra effects on the final lift hill. It's still smooth. It's a blast. And especially riding it at night where you can't really see where you're going, and people are near the end of the day and they're having a blast. This is the case both in Florida and California. I'm not saying in this particular case, I think it's kind of a wash. I think Florida is a bigger setup, so it feels a little more epic. But Disneyland, I also love it. You kind of feel like you're right in the middle of everything. Both of them, I'd say, are about equal. It'd be tough for me I'd have to ride both of them consecutively or whatever. Disneyland, I might give a slight edge only, but for the effects at the end and everything else. But Disney World is currently in the process of redoing everything. Will Disney World be higher with some of the new changes like the Rainbow Cavern scene and everything else? We shall see. But for me at Disneyland, this was the most fun coaster that I rode. More fun than the Matterhorn, more fun than Space Mountain. I did this 3 times over 2 days. I also did, if you count both sides, 3 on the Matterhorn, 3 on Space Mountain. So I have a pretty good gauge of all 3 of these, and especially the last 2 that I did twice at night. Incredible. Loved it so much. The final ride I did on my trip was Big Thunder Mountain, and it was incredible. Loved it. Credit Coaster is good too, but this was amazing. All right, let's get into the awards. Let's start with Best Meal. It was a close call, but I got to say the quesadilla egg roll from the Lunar New Year shop. I don't know if you call it shop, kiosk, whatever, which is basically shredded beef birria and cheese. It's like a fusion appetizer. That was the tastiest thing I had. It had really hit the spot. Honorable mention, second one goes to the corn dog at Little Red Wagon. Thanks to everyone who recommended that. It was awesome. Also, of course, both Dole Whips were great. Churro was great. You know, a lot of the coffees, not the Joffrey's hot one. Oh, terrible. But the cold brews all hit. Starbucks, even Joffrey's on that front were good choices. Worst meal. Easy call. Hungry Bear restaurant, the barbecue restaurant. I had heard really good things that the menu had been improved a lot. Maybe it was just when I went, it was pretty late at night. Slow service, too greasy, messy, and they put pickles on it. But I know some of you love pickles, so you're thinking that's great. But really the greasiness is what got to me, and it was just too messy for me at that time of night. But overall, the food was really good. I could also list the sandwich I had was really good at the Lucky Fortune, if you wanted to list another thing. That was great. In terms of just overall disappointments on the trip, I would say not getting to see the Walt Disney animatronic. Not because I thought it would be amazing, but it was one thing I had never done before from Walt Disney Magical Life. And I wanted to experience the whole show. I probably would have done it a few times to really get a good gauge of it. Unfortunately, he was broken the whole time. On a similar note, I only got to do Soarin' Over California one time because it was down for so much of the day. You know, I was lucky to be able to do it. We'll talk about more about that later. But it was a little disappointing. Also, while I didn't really miss it, like I mentioned, but Rise of the Resistance being down the whole time, being a solo person, especially if they had done the single rider line or whatever, but I would have made a priority to see that again. And there's so many little touches that maybe I haven't experienced yet, so that would have been fun to do. Switching over to surprises, I have to say, despite expecting it to be good, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed Tiana's. I thought it was even better than expected, and I had heard kind of mixed things about the animatronics and everything else. And even though I think a lot of people thought, okay, it's time for Splash Mountain to go, just given the source material and everything else, I still didn't get the sense of, you can never really get a good sense because there was so much kind of comparison and baggage there and everything else. Like, okay, what is Tiana's like on its own merits? What's it like? And it's hard to say that because you're still following the same path, but there's a lot to like. And I think it's a home run. The only reason some people, I think the lines were so short is because it got chilly and people didn't want to get soaked. But it's a lot of fun, and I had a blast riding it and would love to ride it many more times and also to get on it in Florida. Another one was Fantasmic. I know, I think Fantasmic is a great show, but the differences between Disneyland and Disney World, Disney World obviously has the benefit of having its own theater, so it's not like something that interferes with guest flow and everything else. But the benefits of having it on the Rivers of America, it's also a good way to make sure that Disney doesn't get weird and try to take out those Rivers of America, is really cool. The things they do with the various boats, like the Mark Twain and especially the Columbia, are just awesome. Also, it's not a surprise, but it was like more of a reminder when I rode the Mark Twain of just how much the Rivers of America brings to the park. This is not just nostalgia. More on that in a bit about other elements of nostalgia. This is not just nostalgia like, oh, back in my day, we had the Rivers of America, and oh, you just don't know. No, because to me, I actually personally try to kind of check myself a lot, especially when it comes to Epcot and to certain attractions, to not be like, things used to be great and now they're not. Like in terms of the parks, that's all I'm talking about. No, I think there are amazing new attractions. Some decisions they made, i.e. getting rid of Horizons, getting rid of the Rivers of America in Florida, I don't agree with. Even if Cars is a home run, I feel like there had to be another way to do it. And I just feel like because it's not just about the riverboat. And you could say, well, I never go to Tom Sawyer Island or I never go to the Pirate's Lair. That's not really what it's about. There's so much to be gained there. And me also, too, I love the idea of like when you ride like the Mark Twain or you used to ride the Liberty Square Riverboat. It's not just about the experience of riding the boat. It gives you this different view. It gets you away from the crowd. But also, it's not like you're going to sit in some corner. You're away from the crowd, but you're still in the park. you're still experiencing the park. You're still seeing everything around it and experiencing it and looking around and seeing people having fun and seeing everything that's happening while in this comfortable, different experience riding the boat. It even hit me more. Like, it surprised me how much it meant to me to be able to go and ride this. Okay, we're going to get to worst old man pain attraction. This is going to be the most obvious one. It's Goofy Sky School. I'm okay getting beat up a little by roller coasters. The Matterhorn beats you up a little bit. Space Mountain in Florida beats you up a little bit. I love those. I'll ride them over and over. But when something beats you up and also is an unpleasant, loud experience, and, you don't really get any of the good things out of it, you're sitting in a kind of uncomfortable car going, oh, ow, ow, ow. Like, it starts out with a bunch of turns. And wild mouses are designed to kind of throw you around in the seat. This does what a wild mouse does. So I get it. Like, I think about the Dark Knight coaster at Six Flags Great America and other parks. That kind of slams you against the side. But at least you're kind of indoors and it's dark and there's a few sets. Here, you're outside, and I know this is designed to, again, resemble kind of a classic amusement park ride. It wasn't originally called Goofy Sky School. It had a different name that is escaping me at the moment. But still, it's bad news. It hurts. It's unpleasant. It's loud. I know there are defenders of Goofy Sky School that just like the craziness of it and how it's different than most other Disney parks. I can't do it. It's not for me. So Matterhorn is secondary here, but the Matterhorn I loved, so it did not. Some people I know have complained about it. That is not me. Let's talk about a few silly moments from the trip as a solo traveler. I think I mentioned them all in the clips, so I'll just reiterate. The moment with sitting in the wrong seat with Karen, I mean, that moment was only a few seconds, but it made me laugh the more I thought about it because of the whole prep where over and over and over at the gate, they were saying, Karen, can you come here? And every time somebody would walk up over the loudspeaker, they'd say, are you Karen? Are you Karen? No. And of course, I sit in the wrong row and I'm in grumpy Karen's seat. And the fact that she's named Karen, the person that was not there, is also ridiculous. Another moment too, which is I'm wearing my wireless headphones and one of them slides. Sometimes they get loose in the ear. One of them slides out of my ear. They're inside their inner ear, not on the big ones over your ears, falls out and goes under the stuff of this person who I don't know in the row across from me. And then I had to casually ask her, hey, sorry, my wireless headphone just fell under your stuff. And took a little bit to find it. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to crawl on the floor next to our stuff. But then we saw it and I was like, oh my gosh. In the parks, I think me riding Casey Jr., it was early on the first day, and I'm always just I find that I've gotten much more confident. The few times I've traveled solo, I'm much more confident now that like, hey, I'm just doing this for me. One, no big deal. No one says anything. If you go up and you're like, that's me, that's what I'm riding. Lots of people go solo. That's cool. But going to Casey Jr., and then I was hoping they have some kind of open air seats. I really wanted one of those. I did not want to ride in the cage, but it was the only spot left, and there was a lot of space. So I did ask the people in there. I said, hey, are you guys okay if I ride in here? And I was not going to be on top of them. And they said, sure. And I just had a good time. But, in hindsight, kind of silly, me, 50-year-old man riding Casey Jr. by himself. I mean, with other people, but by himself in terms of his own party in a cage. Okay, great rides being great. These are just rides that I've always thought were great, that were great. Pirates of the Caribbean, totally hit. Of course, Haunted Mansion, but Pirates just at Disneyland, just such a gem. Indiana Jones, didn't get to ride it in 23, though I spent a lot of time in the queue, rode it twice, wish I had ridden it even more, just awesome. Soarin' over California, the one time I rode it, worth it. It's still just... It's hard to explain to someone whose first time riding that was Soarin' Around the World to then go back. Because like I said, it doesn't look as crisp. It doesn't have the CGI. So it looks more like, this actually I felt like looked a little beat up, I will say. But the music's so much better. But I think you can easily say, well, isn't it better to go around the world than just have it be California, especially at Epcot when you know this? And I'm like, nope. There's nothing, I mean, this isn't just nostalgia. I rode Soarin' Around the World several times the day before, and I enjoyed it. It actually went up a little bit in my estimation just as I rode it more and people got into it and everything else. Still just isn't as good as Soarin' or California. And the pair at DCA, Radio Springs Racers, and Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, both awesome. Have ridden them before, both of them. but need to ride them a lot more, especially Guardians. I've only gotten 2 different songs and, haven't, it's just, you can't go wrong with that. It's a simple setup, but with going up and down, adds a lot more to it than just dropping. I mean, you do go down and then up on Tower of Terror, but starting out and not having that build up feels completely different. It's just such a different experience. And Jungle Cruise, I always forget, like I said, how much I enjoy that. We had a great skipper, and I think I'm at the age now where this is my bag. It's wonderful. Okay, maybe a little too much nostalgia. I'm going to say Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. I still think it's a great attraction. That's great, huh? But I felt the length a little more this time, and I think just having experienced it a few different times and being a bit tired and kind of wanting to go in and see Walt, it felt a little bit of a letdown. I'm still glad I got to do it. I didn't think I got to do it, so that was one benefit, but there might be a little nostalgia there. The railroad a bit, only because I feel like I really noticed how we were kind of squished in there and how long we sat at each station. It just felt so slow. And I think I've had experience in Florida also, but again, when you have more stations like you do at Disneyland, it really comes out. And then the subs. I know that the subs have so much history in going back to 1959, and the fact that they still have the subs at Disneyland is great. And I think parts of it are cool. I don't know. I've complained about the Nemo part enough. I don't think I need to do that anymore. But I just feel like I don't want them to get rid of them. I think there's more they can do, but my nostalgia might be coloring that a bit. Improving with each time I ride. These are 2 attractions. One is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which I did several times in Florida the last trip, and then did it other times in 22, and enjoying it more every time. And Disneyland with the extra cool queue to set it up, given that it's its own space and not like redone from the great movie ride. Just awesome. Just really great. There's so many things going on in that ride. The mix of physical sets and screens is so well done. And the trackless ride system you use much better there than it was in Ratatouille. So I think it's really a home run. And Web Slingers, like I talked about in the clips, it's growing for me. I mean, I know that they have the same lines every time and everything, and I wish there was more variation, but there's a lot of different things you can do, including you hit things like the Doctor Strange item. There's little items you can hit. There's various things. You can even just like focus on certain parts of it, the ride every time. So there's more variation to it, and I think swinging the arms around is a lot of fun. It's more fun than hurting your arms pulling the string on Toy Story Mania, though that's also a fun ride too. We're going to close with the final category, which is just best experiences. And this is tough because I could almost just list every single thing that happened almost during the day. But I'm going to narrow it down. I'm going to say the experiences at Rope Drop. And I don't mean the waiting. The waiting's not that exciting, though. The first day, there was so much anticipation. I love the idea of when they start the music and people start to get excited, and then they pull the rope away, and then it still holds you, and then you all start walking really fast. There's nothing like it. I mean, we had this experience also at Six Flags Great America when Ed and I went, and I've had this experience at other places, even Six Flags St. Louis. But something about a Disney park, getting there, you don't always get there Rope Drop, especially in Florida. And getting to these parks before Rope Drop and getting to have that experience where we went to Peter Pan and you get on and everybody's like, yeah, we got there. We did what we wanted to do. And then especially Radiator Springs Racers was really cool. Paint the Night. The reason it's not just the parade itself, it's the fact that I didn't plan on watching it and then stumbled into it. Moments like that really stand out. And then I hadn't seen it before and just getting to see it. Most of it, while not planning to, you could say, oh, it slowed you down. No, it was really cool. Soarin' over California again, I, up until like a week before, did not know I was going to get to experience it. And then, of course, wondering if I would experience it because it was down, and then finally getting to do it was great. Big Thunder at night. I mean, what more can you say? That's all you really have to say. If you've gone to the parks and done that, you get it. It's a great night ride. It feels so fast. And then the runaway mine train idea feels even a lot stronger and it feels more like the wildest ride in the wilderness when you are on it at night. This is also true in Florida. And I just say the overall vibes, being in these parks, especially given the state of the world and certain things that are happening then and now as I think about it, but also just good vibes, people being happy, people getting along with each other, people having shared exciting experiences, like, for example, riding Guardians and everybody just letting it out, just like, whoa, and all that, and just being silly everybody having fun. Star Tours is like that. People having fun. People getting so into Buzz Lightyear. People riding anything you ride. Big Thunder at Night, for an example. Space Mountain, everything. Just people having fun together. All ages, races, cultures, nationalities coming together. Sometimes, you know each other with family members, you have friends, you people that don't know each other, sharing that moment. Like, you ride a ride next to somebody. You're never going to see that person again for the most part. Maybe you give them a high five. Maybe you just head nod. You're like, yeah, that was great. Those types of experiences, I had so many of them. You do every time you go to a park. And that to me is one of the big ways. Like, people describe going to the parks kind of like a drug. And there's a wide range of reasons why, whether it's just getting away from cares at home, whether it's a great meal, incredible attractions, spending time with family. But part of it is just, I think, that shared experience. And then for me, it's also the planning and being crazy and trying to see how much you can do. But just that experience is something really special that I'll always take with me from every Disney trip, but especially from this one. All right, well, we are getting to the end of this episode. It's getting pretty long. We're significantly over an hour here. So I want to briefly look ahead to kind of how I'm feeling right now about Disney and where they're going. Obviously, I mentioned it in the first episode, my feelings about Josh D'Amaro coming over and taking over. As CEO for Bob Iger, I think rather than someone from the outside who might even have more business experience, having somebody that led the parks and obviously has spent times in the parks and has had to try and convey their mission at the D23 and everything else is super important. Now, I'm going to be interested to see what kind of big decisions he makes. Now, obviously, it's going to be a while before we get to that way. But for example, this might have nothing to do with tomorrow, but we've seen now the Monsters, Inc. ride staying for another year. I assume Pandora is still happening. I assume they haven't made any dramatic changes to Disneyland Forward, but I'm making assumptions. I don't know. Did Fire and Ash, while very popular, did they decide after that that Avatar is starting to slow down? Is it going to happen? Did they decide they want to do something else? Who knows? What's going on with kind of everything in the Magic Kingdom? They recently scrapped, according to news stories. I wouldn't say scrapped. I said made adjustments to their Villains Land. And how much more is going to go into that? Are they going to be able to, we ran into this with Tron. This happened a little bit with Galaxy's Edge, but especially with Tron. Are they going to be able to keep up the momentum and excitement when this takes a really long time to build? I feel like Universal has really outdone them in just the way that they announce things at a certain point. They don't announce things that are going to get shelved too often. I mean, again, this is general. I'm sure they've done that before. You don't have to let me know that. But announce things that are going to be open pretty soon. Like they announced the coaster replacing Rip Ride Rocket, I think is going to open in 2027. So they didn't announce something that's going to open and say, well, maybe it'll be 2030 like Villains Land or whatever. And I know some of the things Disney's doing with these lands is a lot more involved than just replacing a roller coaster. However, there is a difference where you want people to be just so pumped. How do you retain that? I think it's something Disney still needs to work on, is finding they're getting better at it. You even see it with some updates like the Muppets update, which is happening really quickly and should be opening, I believe, this summer. They just closed Rock and Roller Coaster. And it does feel like the Animal Kingdom updates, they're trying to move quickly while they were also trying to give everyone their last rides on Dinosaur. So it does seem they're starting to get it, but it's also too, like now that when we get to the point where D'Amaro's in charge, what are some of the new things that we know nothing about that are going to be announced? What is that going to be? How are they going to approach the fact that we are still in a situation where their attendance feels soft? This doesn't seem like a blip. This is more of a trend. And so are they going to go with kind of the Chapek model and a little bit Iger, but especially Chapek, which was, we're okay accepting lower attendance. We're just going to make sure the people that do go spend so much more money than they ever have. Or is there a balance? Can Disney find ways to continue to get high revenues, but also have deals, especially, they've started to do that with some of the deals, but I think they need to take it a lot further, especially with ticket prices. I think instead of offering just some special ticket for Disney Plus people that doesn't include the Magic Kingdom? What can you do to kind of push that? Can they adjust operating hours to make it okay? We're going to have high tickets, but we're going to give you more time. Maybe cut back a bit on some of the parties. I know people like the parties, but things like that. What can they do to improve the guest experience and also remain at the forefront of the themed entertainment industry? It's a volatile industry, especially when people don't have as much money to spend. Like I mentioned, Six Flags, you are seeing certain vendors, certain companies that really pride themselves on customer service. And you see what they're doing at Dollywood right now with this entirely new night flight expedition. Silver Dollar City announced they're closing Thunderation, but they're building something, and they're also building a massive resort. Herschend has really found an interesting way to kind of have good service and have higher prices than like Six Flags, but also make it seem worthwhile. Then you have Six Flags, which is still trying to figure out what it is right now. I mean, I spent $55 and got access to every park in the country. But then there's part of me that's like, yeah, but do I want to go to that many of them? I'm not really sure, and then where Disney's standing at the top and Universal's up there too. What does Disney want to be as far as parks? I mean, what do they want to focus on? I know they're going to keep doing these big, high-tech, massive attractions, but how much do you try to do everything that's new and remove things like the Rivers of America? How do you focus on your parks? I don't think they should have a fifth gate because I feel like there's still too much opportunity at the 3 parks beyond, even with Magic Kingdom. I'm not letting Magic Kingdom off the hook. I feel like the Tomorrowland Speedway right there is a big area they could do something, either upgrading that ride or completely changing it. They're already working on, obviously other areas, but setting that aside, they are doing big updates there. Hollywood Studios still needs something more significant. That's what they're doing, the Monsters Land and everything else, but capacity's still not there. Animal Kingdom's capacity is still going to be an issue even after the new rides open. So how are they going to address that? So I'm cautiously optimistic because, like I said, I feel like for this trip to Disneyland, the value was there. For my last trip to Walt Disney World, the value was there. But in both cases, at Walt Disney World, I stayed in a moderate, it was pretty frugal overall. Knew the tickets were a big price, but kind of made it up other ways. But with now the changes in Southwest, how is that going to affect flying to Disney or to Orlando in the future? And maybe even it might have more of an impact as we go forward because they are really lost in the wilderness right now. They are, I think. But I'm excited to see what happens. And I will say, I don't know when the next time is I'm going to record a show. If Disney announced like a mic drop kind of, oh my God type thing, maybe I'll jump on. It would have to be on the level of we're bringing the People Mover to Disneyland or something on that level. Not just here's another IP, we're going to drop it there. Maybe D23. I don't know. I don't plan to record for a while. It's been a lot to put these shows together, more than I anticipated, especially this last one. I don't know when the next one will be, but I hope you enjoy getting to hang out with me along this trip and hear some thoughts I have about Disney and about my trip. I want to give a thanks to everybody who gave suggestions for this, including all of the St. Louis Disney fans crew. Years ago, it was the Disney Twitter, but we're all vacated that for understandable reasons. But you guys are awesome. Love getting the chance to meet in person and chat about Disney. And you also had some good recommendations for places to eat and things to do in the parks. Also, shout out to, I mentioned Tim Grassi earlier, but also, of course, Skipper Ben, who gave me a lot of good suggestions for Disneyland and food. Sorry, I did not get a chance to eat the giant chicken sandwich from Bim's Kitchen. I just looked at it and I was like, if I eat that, I will go into a food coma. I won't be able to keep moving. But thanks, Ben. Thanks, Tim. I'm going to beat you guys in fantasy baseball this year, despite a recent player that I traded for getting suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. That was a fun experience, but I'm looking forward to that this year. Thanks to all of you for listening and to all of you who sent notes or messages or just enjoyed the show. Really appreciate it that, I can jump in here, not do a show for a long time, jump in, and that some of you will be excited. Appreciate it. If you want to send me a note or just say, hey, Dan@tomorrowsociety.com. Always love hearing from you. Or you can follow me on Blue Sky at the Dan Heaton. Any messages you want to send, it's awesome to hear from you. As always, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this quick little journey to Disneyland with me and just getting to check in. Hey, like I've said before, the podcast didn't end because I don't love the parks or because I had lost interest. I still think the parks are awesome. Love going to them. Love a lot of things Disney's doing. Not all of them, but a lot of things they're doing. And I'm just a fan. I'm just somebody who loves going to theme parks, loves riding roller coasters, loves dark rides, has always enjoyed it. And I'm, again, not really a Disney movie fan. I mean, I like the movies, but I like a lot of different movies. I'm more of a Disney parks fan, and it's just a theme park industry in general fan. I grew up going to Disney World. So for me, getting the chance now to, whether it's with family, solo, friends, everything else, to go to these parks is so fortunate, so fortunate. And finally, I'll just say, take care of yourself. There's a lot going on in the world right now that we can't control. We can't control what people are doing in power and decisions they're making and how they're acting. What I try to do, I don't always succeed, is to try and stay upbeat and work on, how do I interact with people online, but especially in person, at work, friends, family, everyone else. And that includes all of you. So take care of yourself out there. That's all I got for you right now. I hope you enjoyed it. And who knows? Maybe I'll talk to you again sometime soon in the future. Take care. Just take care of yourself out there, guys. Have a good one.